But we can't hear you, Scott. You have your like bee in your mouth like last time.
Yeah, John is dressed like that because it's 65 here right now.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it's Southern California cold.
Yeah. Polar weather in Southern California.
Arctic blast, absolutely.
How much is it in Celsius?
It's like 20 Celsius roughly.
Oh, how terrible for you.
Exactly.
All right, welcome Internet. This is the IPython Dev Meeting for December 18th. Let's start cracking on the agenda. We have 7244 up first, which is the discussion about moving signatures out of the notebooks to reduce merge conflict and putting them in an SQLite database.
Yeah, the general idea is, after talking with Aaron Amadea a bit the other day, basically the notebook trust is not, whether a user or machine trusts a notebook is not really part of the notebook itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, when I open this notebook, I want to see, is this notebook trusted? And there are lots of, the most immediate problem with the signature being stored in the notebook is that it means that all changes to a notebook, even just another user running it with no changes and saving it, results in a merge conflict, because any change anywhere results in a change on the same line.
Mm-hmm.
But also just the model, so that's the direct annoyance that actually affects people, but also the model, it just doesn't make much sense for signatures to be in notebooks. We did that because it was easy. It's the easiest way for signatures to follow notebooks around is to make them be in the same file. But since it does cause problems, there are a variety of other ways to store signatures. One is the version that I implemented is to store. Don't change anything about how we sign things. Just store the signatures in a database instead of in the notebook. So when you trust a notebook, it does the same signature and then just stores it in a database. So it's completely disconnected from the file. So if you have identical notebooks, they're automatically trusted. Like if you make 10 copies of the same notebook, if you happen to do two things that end up at identical notebook states, then they will both be trusted. But mainly it's just moving the storage of the signature out, and then there's
the advantage of not linking it to the file name in any way is that if you're moving the notebook around, we don't have to come up with some way to try and track where that file is going.
Oh no, I think the content hashing model is exactly the right way to do it. Also because it means that for blob store models, which will basically not necessarily have a file name concept or a path concept in the same way, but which typically do have the ability to hash their content, it will be automatically an easy solution.
I agree.
So no, I like it a lot. I do like it quite a bit. I haven't reviewed the code, so I have a question. Are you opening and closing the cursor on each write on the SQLite database, or are you keeping it locked? It would be. I hope it's the former.
It should be the former. I think. We might need to check, but because if you run two notebook servers at the same time, it should be fine.
Yeah. For that reason, and also because I actually do synchronize my SQLite history databases across machines, and as long as they're not locked, that never causes a problem. So, and since I don't do it kind of by definition, when I do a sync, it's because I'm not actively running code anyway and actively using it.
But it should. When you sign a notebook, so which is under normal use cases, every time you save, it should open a transaction, make a change, write one value, and then commit that change.
No, I don't have problems even synchronizing the history database that gets written to far more frequently than this would. And so as long as it's not a long-lived open cursor on that database.
No, it's just it does two things. It says is this signature in the database?
Mhm.
Then close, and then it does put the signature in the database. Close.
Okay.
Like that. There, but-
What's the fallback if somebody ends up in a system where SQLite wasn't configured? Does the notebook run at all today? Or
It
is
already
um,
no, it already doesn't.
it already does.
Because sessions don't work. Yeah, you can't associate kernels with notebooks.
Fine.
But
This doesn't introduce a new
signature
dependency.
code. Yeah, the signature code handles that in a somewhat similar way to the history code, in that it just says, I can't sign things, assume all notebooks are untrusted. But you actually won't be able to run the notebooks
Yeah, well,
for other reasons, not
it
because
means
of this. But, yeah.
we're not changing the dependency and the installation deployment constraints, so
Right.
that's not a question. Okay, I'm trying to think. Kester, from your perspective, do you see anything in this that you either like or that you dislike? And Kyle, you guys think a lot about security, both of you, and it'd be good if you guys have any comments.
I made one comment, but I think, like within the PR, I made a comment about that it's much easier for someone to send like a notebook that could affect anyone as long as they could change the database. But I think that's still like out of scope.
Yeah, but and the way it's stored by default, it's exactly as hard to change the database as it is to change the secret used to sign notebooks.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, then you could already you basically already could accomplish the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was like trying to outline some other like threats to it, but yeah, I'm pretty happy there.
Okay, and which hash algorithm is it using?
It's configurable. It's like, I think it's SHA-256 by default.
Okay.
But
And
yeah, you can.
Did you guys end up salting? Did you end up salting or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, briefly removed. The idea was that with the database file itself being secret, it started to make sense to get rid of the notion of the notebook secret signing, so that you have a secret for signing notebooks. But then it made sense to keep that around for salt, so it's still there. So the signatures actually don't change at all.
Okay. Oh, which means that existing trusted notebooks, we could even just on open delete that field from the metadata and put it in the okay.
Yeah, that will. I think Min has that done as part of the NV format upgrade.
I don't see a problem with this. I mean, if anybody wants to lay a last set of eyes on it, that's good. Otherwise, I had been reading the thread and I had looked at the discussion of the PR. I overall like the model. Does anybody see a problem? If not, we'll just move on.
Aaron Armadio will be very happy.
I'm sorry, Thomas, what did you say?
Aaron Armadio will be very happy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see him today, so I'll give him the good news.
Yeah, and he said he would buy you unlimited beers, so just as long as you're not driving.
Yeah, I may not be back tomorrow. Depending on how that goes. I actually need to run to AGU now, so I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, get drunk after your talk. Have a good talk and say hi to Aaron and Chris and those guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
See you.
Dude. Okay, we're good on that. Scott, it says that you would like to join. You're here. Is there any problem? Okay.
No, I put that in before the meeting.
Ah, okay.
So remind us.
Okay, good. Joy of the web. All monospace characters of a font have the same width. The same character does not always have the same width. I don't understand the second sentence.
Like you see your problem with the terminal and your Midnight Commander, which has different line with different widths, because bold fonts have not the same widths, even if they are monospace, than non-bold font.
So isn't this a problem? I guess I would say, shouldn't well-designed monospace fonts not have that problem?
I mean, monospace font means that for a certain, basically a monospace bold and a monospace regular are not the same font, which means that all characters in the monospace regular are the same width. All characters in the monospace bold should have the same width, but most of the time, some font implements the bold for each character manually, but if the character does not exist, the web browser will expand the path. It means that the font doesn't have the same size. And even if you look, I found like blog posts on Ubuntu where they say like, yeah, you can implement a monospace font with bold characters that are wider than a regular one. It's still a monospace font because all bold characters will have the same width.
But how would we even? So some people may have a problem, others may not.
Yes, depending on the font.
Okay.
But actually, hold on. I think there's an additional knob here that we can turn, but I could be wrong on this. But if I remember correctly, VT100 and TTY management, there are knobs you can turn on whether the ANSI special character is emitted, is rendered by the terminal emulator using a bold font or not, because that's actually a special control code in the ANSI sequence. And so it may be, it may be that X11 terminal emulators or Windows or Mac native GUI terminal emulators may handle this layout differently than the JavaScript one. And because we shouldn't be in the business of fighting this battle right now, in the meantime, we should look into whether we can disable that behavior, whether it's possible in the term.js instantiation code to tell it not to allow bold font, so it ignores the bold flag, because in the ANSI you don't control font in ANSI. What there is there's a special one of those escape back bracket 33 things that sets a property on the font, and terminal emulators can filter that thing out.
Sure.
And if that's the case, that's the easier way to do it. And later one day we could figure out how GUI terminal emulators deal with this, and maybe they know how to recompute the font grid or whatever. But in the meantime, the easier solution may be to just turn that off. I know
that might be shipping our own term.js with patches.
I mean, there's an even easier approach, and that's to just tell people, well, just use a different monospace font that has a better property.
Do we know which ones? Do we know which ones work and which ones don't?
I don't know that we know yet.
I haven't found really good ones. There is, for the one I have tried, there is always a slight variation.
Because Brian, I'm okay with your idea as long as the set that works is not the empty set.
or the set of monospace fonts that suck.
So I'm looking at the term.js source code. There is a function called isBoldBroken, which says if bold is broken, we can't use it in the terminal. So it is clear that they have run into this.
Okay.
Presumably that detection is not quite working out on your system for some reason.
Okay, so let's figure out. I mean, one I don't know enough about JavaScript, but one option could be to just in our version basically monkey patch that version with is our implementation of isBoldBroken returns true unconditionally and doesn't even try, so that effectively we hard disable any attempt to render the bold stuff until we figure this out. I mean, maybe later we can find a cleaner solution, but I would be totally okay if we say for now, this is just, I mean, you don't get bold fonts in the terminal. I'd much rather lose bold fonts in ASCII, which is a rare and minor thing, than get misaligned columns, which makes impossible to use certain programs.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so let's look into how to disable that, either by monkey patching that function, or if there's a config flag somewhere to turn that off, and we can look into making it a nicer solution next year.
I think the issue with this may simply be, so Matthias was saying about, if there aren't certain characters in the bold typeface, then it kind of automatically bolds some things from the regular typeface. And looking at this function, it's testing the width, but only with the string "hello world." So funny characters that it's doing different things with, that won't be in that.
Yeah. In that case, I would almost say the answer is both broken is always true, because I mean you can test with anything on your screen, and then later you type ls and a file name has a different character on it, and all of a sudden your screen is messed up. So. Okay. 7175.
I'll open an issue for that right now.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Brian. 7175. Okay, I haven't read this PR.
So, as I was busy refactoring the channel machinery, somebody said, it's annoying to me that the in-process kernel is blocking. I would like to contribute an asynchronous in-process kernel. So when you, if you have your in-process kernel embedded in a GUI application, the code execution is actually happening in a separate thread. It makes a certain amount of sense, but given that we already have the async kernel machinery and we don't use it ourselves, so it's probably not very well supported, I'm wary of adding another in-process kernel class.
I would much rather if there's anything in our design that makes it impossible to implement this or extraordinarily awkward because it has to multi-patch 17 methods, let's make it easier to make this subclass. But I would say this subclass, I would like it to live elsewhere. I don't want to be debugging and maintaining threading bugs. The threading behavior of the Python interpreter, especially when GUI code is in the mix, is a fucking nightmare. And I really, really don't want to have to debug that kind of stuff. I've heard the worst stories of people with these kinds of bugs in Qt especially. Qt has a lot of weird behavior with threads that come from the C++ side of Qt that in Python makes stuff really hard. PySide has had endless amount of problems. And I would rather, I'm all for this being something that is important to some communities, and I'm all for making our subclass easier to our base class, easier to subclass. And if there's any cleanups that we can do, I'm totally for that. But I would rather not offer that in our core code. I really would rather not.
That's pretty much what I thought as well.
Actually, when I did the refactoring of the way the event loop integration works with the kernel, basically my conclusion at this point is that it's not only difficult to debug, there's a mathematical proof that you cannot implement that in a thread-safe way. It is absolutely impossible.
Yeah, let's just I think we'll make it possible. There are people who may have an application where that makes sense for them, and we're not going to prevent them from doing that, but we're not going to be the ones carrying that code. Thank you. Hey guys, okay. First, status.jupyter.org.
Kyle? I think Matthias ended it. But
holy cow! Who did this? You guys rock. Thank you so. This is beautiful.
So we can't take all the credit there. Statuspage.io gave us a free account. I just went and asked.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was about to say this looks suspiciously familiar.
I don't care.
Like every other API.
I love it.
I'm actually adding metrics too. You know what, I'll switch to view. Let's see. Although I might have killed all the metrics I was running. Let me see if I can run them again.
This is so awesome. I love it.
Yeah. No, it's really...
See
really cool.
Thank you so much.
So if you guys give your email to Kyle, he can add you as an admin so that you can add like warning or message if you know something is wrong or update the status.
People of the internet, thank you.
So, I probably won't show anything now because I literally just started adding metrics this second to this one. But it'll also track any metrics that you want to add to it. So, like HTTP response and everything else. So I should have this up like within the next hour or so.
Wow, that's awesome, Kyle.
Yep.
Thank you so much, guys. This is awesome. Wow. I'm so happy. I am happy. It's sad. It's sad that it's so easy to make me happy, but it really, I am.
What was that? I guess it was a surprise. It's Merry Christmas, Fernando.
Yes,
Merry
that's
Christmas.
yeah, and it speaks miles to the kind of geek that I am. That this is my Christmas gift. Sweet. All right, Jupyter Drive progress. Matthias and Kester.
So
I
it's
think
Can you hear me now, by the way?
Oh, Kester
yes,
has
we
a
can hear you.
microphone now. Yes, welcome.
Thank you. I'll still let Matthias do most of the talking if that's okay, because I'm actually at my desk.
Yeah, no problem. But you can hear us well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So we are moving forward. It works. We have checkpointing and everything. Of course, you need to be on both IPython Master and Jupyter Drive Master. It's already on PyPy if you want to download it and install it. There is still some rough edges to install it, and we are considering how do we do that? Content manager that both blends the local drive and the Google Drive, because right now it's like slightly painful to switch server when you want to switch from Jupyter Drive to Google Drive. To Jupyter Drive from Google Drive to local drive. So we don't know exactly how we want to do that, but it should be doable without changing IPython intervals. The other day we had a discussion with Brian, and we were wondering how we would work on the real time while IPython project is separated into several repos. Because we need to move forward, and if there is a global lock on IPython for 3 months, basically we cannot move forward at all.
Okay, that's going to be a hard one.
We could just do the repo splitting over a weekend.
Yeah, that'll be easy.
Yeah, when we said explode it, we meant it.
Well, I mean, once Matthias is here, which is not that far into the future, we may be able to pull something close to that. I mean, I think we're not going to have, because of financial constraints, we're not going to have the funds in the very short term for a large all-hands dev meeting. But what we could do is do a very simple Friday, Saturday kind of thing, dev sprint for a couple of days, because Matthias, Min, Thomas, and I will be here. John and Brian could either join remotely or come over for a day or two, and we could try to just crank out. I mean, that splitting is going to be so painful that it's going to be one of those rip the Band-Aid. So the moment Matthias is here, we can try to schedule that as early as possible. Do you think, and I think we should schedule that very shortly after 3.0 is out, because the old repo for 3.0 is still going to be there for backports of any bug fixes and whatnot that we want to backport into a 3.01 or a 3.1. And otherwise, we want to have that done early, so we start working on a different code base. So,
I think I definitely, obviously, I'm running on fumes for travel as well, but I do probably have money for to come up there for even more than a few days, and we definitely have money on the Microsoft side for John to do that as well. So, if we need to do a 4-day sprint, or I think money doesn't have to be the determinant factor there.
Yeah. I think, and this is so high priority that I think we should consider doing it. And when we're doing that, we can still have a few discussions, kind of dev meeting style discussions. It's just that we schedule it mostly as a very intense sprint to do that breakup rather than a more general architecture meeting. So now, Matthias, can you give us an estimate of your travel date? And I know there's some uncertainty, but
it completely depends on when the embassy gives me my visa.
Yeah, but normally I can tell you because I've done that so many times. You probably can expect. I know that your DS 2019 is being FedExed today by Liz. So you should get that tomorrow or the day after. Normally, you get a scheduled appointment in about 2 to 3 weeks, so early January. And normally, the visa comes back in a couple of weeks after that. So let's assume that you have a visa in your hand sometime mid to late January.
Then I'm here mid to late January.
Excuse me?
Then I'm here 1 week or 2 weeks after getting my visa.
Okay, just a few weeks.
I'm almost already packed, so.
Okay. Then that means, depending on exactly, Matthias will keep us posted on his paperwork timeline, but then it means we can consider scheduling that event either in late January or in early February. And so with that in mind, Matthias and Kester, what does that mean for the things you have in the immediate pipeline? Is that too late?
I don't think it's too late.
No, it's fine. I guess we will have done the Google Drive integration for simple things. The real time will take some time.
Okay,
after.
so Scott had to drop out. So Matthias, you and him can talk afterwards. Okay, well then in that case, let's stick to that plan so that we don't try to do sort of two things at the same time. Let's stick to that plan. Hey Brian, what's that?
Well, John just tweeted or messaged me about this book, and I actually bought it last week, John.
Oh, cool. So yeah, let's go with that plan, because then we don't have to try to realign timelines in any bizarre way, and we'll just try to make Matthias will try to make that paperwork go through as quickly as possible, and as soon as you have a date, then we'll schedule things here.
One thing I think we should start to do very soon is plan out the sequence of steps that need to happen for the split.
Yes, I think Thomas had started kind of drafting that. Thomas, do you have that somewhere in an organized thing that is more than a piece of paper?
I think it made it somewhere onto the hack pad. It was probably the hack pad for the development meeting where we were talking about it.
Okay, could I ask you a favor? Oh, John lost audio or maybe the ability to speak. Thomas, could I ask you to put that in an IPEP so that we begin seeing it as a more kind of official thing?
I think an IPEP is going to be too static.
Okay.
That's the type of thing that we're going to want to rearrange things, add new things, assign them to people. That to me sounds like Trello, but maybe we want to wait till tomorrow morning and talk to Tim Clem about that.
Yeah, I mean, or even if it's just a hack pad, but kind of a standalone visible one. I just want something with kind of individual visibility, not something buried 10 pages deep into something else.
Yeah, let's do a hack pad. I think that's a much more dynamic, appropriate.
That's totally fine.
Make a hack pad.
Can you move it? Okay, cool.
The other thing is that right now, when you authenticate with Google Drive, Jupyter Drive is still seen as collaboratory. And it would be nice if some of you guys have all the account and everything, create a new Google ID for the project that you have access and you know where it is and it's in your hand and everything. So that it's actually called Jupyter something when you log in.
Do we? Well, you have access to those credentials too. Do we need to make those? I think we put in the credentials file 2 email addresses. I think we have Project Jupyter and we have Jupyter Collaboratory or something like that. I think we have two of those, and you have access to those credentials.
Yeah, but right now I'm like locking my computer, moving, changing flat and everything, so I don't want to start being the only one to have access to that and lost connection into internet. So I would prefer if some of you do that while I'm still in
moving. Okay, so why don't you tell us what specifically you need, and maybe just shoot an email. Thomas, you have access to the credentials too, right?
I think so. Yes, in the KeyPass database.
Yes.
I can. I'll just briefly tell you what we need, and I can also put it in an email too.
Okay.
But basically, we want a entirely new project, so that because only by having a new project can you have like the how the title displayed to the user, like collaboratory versus Jupyter Drive, be different.
Okay.
Projects also cover a lot of other stuff, but I think in general we just want this to be completely separate from collaboratory, and we don't really care about sharing anything between collaboratory and this project.
Okay, and does that require, Kester, does that require that it's associated with a brand new Gmail address, or can we reuse the kind of the umbrella Jupyter Gmail address?
Yeah, it's unrelated to the email address. One email address can have multiple Cloud Console projects, so that's fine.
Okay.
I created two separate. I forked the Google Drive and created two separate applications with their own unique names.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
it's more like a kind of a sign off from the group. You know, for can we create another project?
Sure, yeah. And right now, basically, to put it bluntly, my concern is: does anybody need anything from me? Anything where I'm the bottleneck, we need to unlock that, because right now I'm the bottleneck on 100 different things, and so I just want that question answered.
As long as someone has the credentials and I can communicate with that person, let them know how to do it.
Thomas and Kyle, we've spread that access quite a bit, precisely so that Brian or I are not the only bottlenecks on that.
Obviously, I do as well.
Yeah.
I guess Kyle might be the best person to work with since he's done this so many times.
Kyle, can you take a minute to help us with that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'll shoot you an email.
So one thing that I think we need to keep an eye out for is what the UI will be for switching between files on the local drive and Google Drive. And I know, Matthias, you said that you think you can do that without any changes to IPython, but I also want to make sure that the UI is not confusing.
I actually kind of like Brian's original idea of switching, just being able to switch content managers. That's kind of, in a way, a very clean, because you already have this concept of a content manager anyway.
So having a drop down in the dashboard that just switches on the fly.
Yeah.
You cannot like switch content manager like that. I mean, you could have a drop down that change the URL path and have a blinking content manager, but just swapping JavaScript implementation is like monkey patching. You shouldn't do that.
Oh no, actually, I remember now why we didn't like Brian's idea in the end. And that was because it has to change across all the tabs when you do this, and all the URLs will have to change and stuff, so it doesn't really work. We really need to support both of them at once, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I should clarify. When I say switch, I don't mean disable the other one. All I mean is change which one you're currently viewing in the dashboard.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Because obviously, notebooks that are already open for the other content manager have to continue to work. Right?
Yeah, so I think the thing is that because of the requirement for notebooks to work in both cases, you need to really represent the drive as a mounted file system, like a fake mounted file system, because otherwise how do we know which URL corresponds to which content manager?
We'll basically have the Google Drive stuff be a separate directory that appears.
Yeah.
I mean, even if this directory is like hidden and that you have a drop down to change it, but from the API point of view and from the logic point of view, it should be a fake directory.
I'm fine with it being a fake directory as long as there's no chance that it's confused with the Google Drive directory that people actually have mounted on their computer.
Yeah, I mean, it can be different color, it can be a button, because it's fake at the point of, from the URL's perspective, for the server to know that it shouldn't deal with that and that the pure JavaScript will use it. But I think it's fine.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. Just as long as it's not confusing, that sounds like a very simple, good approach.
Okay. LabPy console integrates IPython notebook. Yeah.
So we had it's an Android project that just sent a mail to the mailing list a few hours ago, and they are integrating the notebook into an Android app. and they are just wondering if we have comments, if it's okay to use IPython this way, if like everything is fine and they're saying hello.
Yeah,
so
I
as
mean,
you are,
I think so. Yeah, their license is okay. I mean, they can use GPL. That's fine. The only concern is the use of the Python trademark, and they already apparently got approval from the PSF, which has a formal trademarks committee, and there is no IPython trademark because it's too close to Python, and so use of IPython as a trademark falls under basically the fair use purview of the PSF. And things like this are the kind of things where typically this is the process for Python. People are saying, we're doing this, and these are the terms, and the PSF says, yes, we approve that. We don't have kind of legal authority here, but it was very nice of them to ask. My plan was to discuss, it's great that you put it on the agenda because I wanted to discuss it with people, but my plan was to give them a quick, hey guys, thanks for asking, yes, that sounds good, good luck with the project. Does anybody have any objections to that? Does anybody see any problems?
I really appreciate how they handled it.
Yeah. My plan was to give them a kind of a thank you, good luck, this is great, keep us posted kind of thing.
Do we want them more to mention Jupyter more than IPython? Don't care.
I would say let's wait for now. As it's updated, it can evolve.
Do we?
And at the moment, it is a Python specific project.
Yeah.
By the looks of it, so.
Do we let you respond?
I'm sorry, one at a time. Matthias.
Do we let you respond to the mail, or do we respond for you?
I can do it as a courtesy. I'll do it quickly.
Sure.
Kyle?
I was asking if you knew why they picked GPL.
It could be. I don't have the foggiest idea. I don't even know who these people are. I don't have the foggiest idea. It could be the GPL is a really, really good weapon for commercial apps. If you want to keep something where you have the option of selling it via another way, or potentially using it in another licensing context, and you want to firewall other commercial competition from you, and you're the sole copyright owner, which I imagine they're probably the sole copyright owner on all of the Android machinery that's on top of the Python and IPython and SciPy and NumPy and any other SciPy stack packages that they're shipping. The GPL is a fantastic weapon for that. Basically, things that are application-like, the GPL is actually a really good choice of license in that sense, because it helps you keep. I mean, I'm not anti-GPL. I think the BSD license is a great license for many, many things and most things, but the GPL has a very useful tool in a certain context. And I remember having a discussion with Brian and Stefan Karpinski in New York a few weeks ago about this, and Stefan made a very good point that, like, I liked how he framed it, which was basically saying if it's something is very app-like, sort of very end-user, single, well-contained, and a mobile app is a perfect example of that, and you want to maintain keep an open side to it, but maintain your competitive edge and firewall derivative work that is not under your control, the GPL is perfect, because derivative work stays on the open side, and you control kind of the entry point. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did.
And they are indeed selling it. There's a free version with advertising and no plotting support, or there's a premium version for $3, which removes the ads and lets you do plotting.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. And that's totally fine. I mean, neither the BSD nor even the GPL prevent anyone from charging anything for an app, so that's perfectly fine. It's their choice. It's their commercial strategy.
Oh, okay. Let's move on. We've got a bunch of more stuff.
So let's see. We have configurability of CodeMirror instances in the notebook.
Okay, so I started trying to apply the new front-end config machinery to get rid of. We had a user config module left over from kind of a previous attempt to slightly add config. So I was clearing that up and moving things over to the new config system. And I wasn't entirely sure what to do about CodeMirror config. So I think I now know what I want to do, but I still thought I'd discuss it. So the class hierarchy of cells in the notebook is
folks,
cell.
I'm going to have to tune out. I'm going to mute myself. I've got an urgent phone call to take, so I'll be muted for a while.
Okay. So cell is the base class, then code cell inherits directly from cell, and that's a thing we use directly. Text cell inherits from cell, and then markdown cell and raw cell both inherit from text cell. So there's three levels in the inheritance at most, and so there are kind of three, and they all have their code mirror options, and like when you instantiate a cell, it kind of, I think it merges like code mirror options based on the class hierarchy. And so there are three kind of ways that we can have user settings for code mirror interacting with that. One is that we could have like user level settings below all of the config, all of the class settings. So you configure like, CM config and that affects all cells. Two is we could have user level config sitting on top of the class config. And this is the one that makes the most sense to me. So you configure like code cell CM config, markdown cell CM config, raw cell CM config, and there's nothing you can set that will affect CM config for all three. And the third option is that we try and do like user config settings for each class in the hierarchy, and then somehow apply things to the relevant cells. I don't even, as you can tell, I don't like this idea. I don't even know how that would work, because this config can be loaded after cells have been created. It's not, you can't just do a dictionary merge of this and then pass it all together in one go. You have to find the relevant cells for a piece of config and apply it.
I think it makes sense to target the leafs in the hierarchy, the class hierarchy, and not try to do in Python where we have the config inherited by children. I think it. And
Yeah.
part of it is what you're saying, that the timing of when cells can be instantiated is a very different model than what we have in Python, where basically there's this consistent, you load config and then you instantiate objects, and that's not quite as, it's not the same in JavaScript for how we use everything. The only other question I have is, would we also unify the config of the CodeMirror instance for the text editor? And a related question is, right now we style the CodeMirror related CSS classes in CodeMirror.less on the notebook page, but that CSS gets loaded on all pages, so it's applying to the text editor version. And we may want to start to segment that into a base CodeMirror.less and then separate CodeMirror CSS and less for each of the different instances that's namespaced by their parent div.
Sure, if someone wants to, but I think that's orthogonal to this.
Okay. Well, yeah, yes and no, except there's some quote config that you do of CodeMirror by changing CSS rather than passing options. Like the
Yeah, but when I say config, I'm talking about the options.
just the option. Okay, yeah, that's fair.
What's the one that will, if we change, will have the more backward compatible behavior?
Well, at the moment there is no front-end config system, so
If we do one, if you do one of these and we see it's wrong, like users are really annoyed, which other one will be the more compatible? Like, I guess the more compatible will be just one settings for all. No, none of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's if we have to change from one to the other, it's going to be a bit annoying for users, but yeah, I think that's going to be similar whichever way.
So then I would lean towards only one things for all code mirror, because you probably want to change key map and you don't want to precise key map in 3 different places.
But there are lots of other things with code mirror that you may well want to have different between, like editing code and editing Markdown.
Yeah, I think the chances of there being differences are very strong.
Plus, because at the moment you have to, the only way to modify config is by having code, writing the config. If you need to modify it for all 3, write a loop, do it for all 3.
Yeah, and also, I mean, one thing, like, maybe over time, as we improve our JavaScript code and understand that better, we could start to actually implement the config inheritance across the hierarchy. But I think right now we don't want to do that, and so to have the full flexibility to be able to configure everything, I think we need to have separate config for each class.
Yeah, that's roughly my thinking. And I'm mostly hoping that we never have to go down the road of inheritable config.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, let's not do that yet. That's definitely a. At that point, I feel like we'd be fighting the language more than we want to.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll wait till ES6 is stably implemented by all browsers.
Even if the language allowed it, I just don't think it's really a good idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, we don't have to worry about it now for sure.
Yeah.
So let's all of the design things Fernando should be here for. Yeah. Let's. Are there anything else on the agenda other than those design things? John, what did you try out Frontify?
No, I didn't try it out. I just saw it and it looked interesting. I mean, I haven't signed up for an account.
Yeah, I just created an account, but yeah, I need to look at it more and see what it exactly does. But
it looked like a tool that may be useful to us, and so I just shared it just in case.
No, that's yeah, it very well could. I mean that. Yeah. No, that's. So I guess none of you is there close to Fernando, right? He's over at Bids.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm the only one in Berkeley still here, and yeah, I'm in Barker Hall.
We can already give what we think about the different designs. So when Fernando is back, we just have to hear what he has to say.
Okay.
That's good.
So the first one is what is it? 7242. And so John, well, I should tell him. So where all of these pull requests, the design stuff came from, is I sat down last week and basically sort of did a design and usability audit of everything, trying to see, okay, well, what do we need to do design-wise, usability-wise before 3.0, and so some of this came from that. Let's see. John, you want to describe the different things?
Yeah. So this PR is just kind of one of those. It's a bundle of different things, mostly trying to unify the experience, the vertical lines and horizontal lines in the notebook, trying to make them look similar across the different pages, but also things like shadows and colors and just trying to move a lot of the stuff into a common less file and making our design a common language across all of our different apps. And there are still some things that need to get figured out with this PR, like design questions about spacing and whether or not to use a gray background everywhere. But yeah, if you guys could check that out and just give feedback based on how it feels, it's the kind of thing that you can have to use for a while to get a real opinion about it.
Yeah, that. And I think John and I will sit down today and try some of the other ideas that different people have had about, like Matthias wanted to see the gray background behind the terminal. Fernando, I did talk to Fernando about it a little bit yesterday, and he said the gray border at the top of the documents he finds a little awkward, and so.
I think it's nice to know that it's the top of the document.
No, I do too, but I mean, I'm more than willing to try different things and just see what they look like.
I think if Min were there, he would say that the toolbar would look really weird without gray background. I think it's annoyed that the background of the toolbar and the menu bar are not the same as the main page.
Do you agree with him on that? Just out of curiosity.
No, I really feel like the toolbar in front and the background is just below the toolbar and everything is sliding.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too.
I tried to do an iOS style where the toolbar was slightly transparent and blur what's behind, but it's super difficult without JavaScript.
Okay. I mean,
I give up.
One thing I think it's important to do in situations like this is there's no harm in trying the different things. And so, maybe this afternoon, John and I can try that variant, try Fernando's variant, and just post screenshots and see what we think. I mean, those are very quick changes, and we can sort of just,
One that I really liked was removing the border around the icon in the toolbar, like almost only the icons.
Yeah, more like what what Scott and the Quantopian guys had.
Yes, I have a screenshot where I did that too.
Yeah.
Oh, can you share the screenshot? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's on design 6. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's an issue open on the Jupyter Design repo.
Oh, okay.
No, we can. Yeah, and I mean, I'm when I identified these things, I was trying to walk a fine line between. Obviously, we don't want to get into doing too much design work because we want to release, but we want to target the big, the main things that are either regressions for this release or things like that. So yeah, we'll play today and post more screenshots, but it would be great if you can actually play with it live, because that definitely we found is an important part of trying those particular ones. So the next one is the terminal's dashboard tab, and this is mine. It's not a pull request; it's just an issue. And well, actually, let's not cover that one first because it won't make sense until we go over 7231. It's an issue again. So after playing with the kernel selector drop-down in the dashboard for the last week, I think we can simplify it and actually get a lot more functionality out of it at the same time. And part of what I realize is that currently there's no way of creating just an empty text file. And so for the last week, I've been opening up the terminal and touching a new file to get new text files. And so my idea basically is to replace the existing new button and kernel selector dropdown with a single new dropdown that lists the different kernel types, and then also lists has an option for new text file, new folder, and possibly new terminal, and basically make a single unified place for users to create anything new.
I kind of feel like this is at least half of what people use the dashboard for. Why are we kind of shoving it all into one button? You know, it feels like we could. I don't see why we can't have several buttons for new things.
Like menu bar with file new, and you can select which one.
I wasn't thinking of a menu bar particularly. I'm just thinking like
That's what just a joke because I was
text file.
And part of it is, I think that, I mean, right, so in practice, we need 4 buttons then. Notebook with different, that has to be a drop-down, terminal, folder, and text file. And I feel like that UI just doesn't scale very well.
Terminal is not a file. It's something which is really different.
But there's a separate issue about that. That's why I wanted to talk about this one first. So set the terminal question aside. But I feel like, and also, I mean, part of this was thinking about how Google Drive handles this. And in their UI, and this is basically what they do. And they have a single new button, and I think the important thing there is that it allows you to have a UI that scales as you move forward, right? I mean, Google Drive allows you to have new apps plug into that framework, and there's a consistent place for creating new entities of that. So you can imagine that eventually we would have a you say new debugger, or whatever else we add, and I think so. That's the idea, and also the other issue is I think the current UI that we even have now after using it, I think it's just way more complex than it needs to be. It works okay, but I think even if we stuck with the current approach, I would be in favor of not having a separate button and drop down. I just don't see why we would have 2 UI elements when a single one would do.
As I said in the PR, I'm fine if there is only the drop down. What I don't want is the drop down that change default value every time you click on it. Which basically was the only thing we agreed, like having this was the only set of things that we all agreed on.
Yes. Yeah. No, and actually, I mean, the other thing I realized is that the whole complexity that we had about how to handle the default selection was only relevant because we had 2 UIs for this. If we just have a new notebook drop-down where you pick the language, like you just pick it. There's no default. I mean, it's just irrelevant. And so I think we created problems for ourselves by sort of artificial complexity in that. And I'll admit, I have a hypothesis about this, that this other approach might be better. I think we just need to try it and see what it's like. I don't want to claim that I know it's better. Any other comments about that particular? Doug, you had, I think, commented on that. Well, I guess, Doug, you're not plugged into a live. If you have feedback about it, Doug, let us know. The other part of this, so this is a separate issue that could be done in conjunction or separate from that other one, is to reconsider this is issue 7234, is to reconsider the terminal's dashboard tab. And the thing that I realized here is that the dashboard has two general abstractions, files and processes, and I just think we should have tabs that reflect those abstractions. And from that perspective, a running notebook and a terminal are both processes, and I don't see why we would treat them separately.
Why? I don't see why we would throw them together. From the user's point of view, those are completely different things. And
you cannot restore a terminal session. You don't have a file which is associated with your terminal session.
Well, but the important thing is the Files tab reflects the files nature of notebooks, and obviously we would not put terminals there. But the Running tab has nothing to do with the file aspect of the notebook. Like, it's only the fact that there's a running kernel that you're tracking there.
What do we gain from putting them together? It seems like mushing things together just for the sake of it.
Well, and this goes back to the other issue, and that is I want users to have a single place to create the different things that they can. And right now, having the terminals tab separate, it's like, oh, well, if I want a text, if I want some things, it's in this tab. If I want a terminal, it's in this tab. And to track where notebooks are, it's in this tab, but terminals are in this tab. I think there's just unneeded complexity there. And so I propose renaming Running possibly to something like Processes, or, I mean, Running is...
Why not just... Because already I think, like, unless... I think the only case in which you switch to the Running tab at present is if you have a load of notebooks open in different folders and you want to shut them down. So you still need to switch to something if you want to see what terminals you have, because you're not sitting in that view. I don't see what... This just seems like a monumentally bad idea, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't... When I'm in that cleanup mode, I don't see why I would distinguish between notebooks and terminals and want to do that in a different...
completely different things. Like, the user...
process. It's a process.
It's a process in terms of how it's implemented, but in terms of what the user sees, it's completely different.
Yeah, I don't...
Yeah, it really is. Okay.
But I don't...
Do what you want.
No. That's please don't be passive aggressive about it. We don't make decisions like that. Obviously, a lot of other people should give their input, and Fernando, if we need, will make the final decision.
What if at some point you get, I don't know, something like more R Markdown, where you have a file, which is really a file, like a Markdown file, but you can basically execute current session, like current block of whatever, and it shows HTML on the side. It's not a notebook, it's not a terminal, it's something different, which is also a file, but also attached to a process. How would you handle that?
So are you thinking about allowing people to, like, run a text file?
Yeah, sure, more like VI mode, either a full text file or a selected place, and you have the, like, output of your Python process on the side, but it's, instead of executing a new Python process, it's still attached to an IPython kernel.
No, I mean, actually, I don't remember when it was, but I was just writing Python code in the text editor, and the question came up to me, oh wow, what if I want to, quote, run this? What would I go to the terminal? And obviously you can do that. But I don't know if that...
So I think there is three distinct things. You have purely file view, purely process view, things that are attached to no file, and you have this category that we have because we are in interactive mode, where you have files that are attached to a process. Well, basically you don't make the distinction. There is like this blending mode. You want to access the view of this file which is attached to a specific process. You can even imagine just crazy things that we won't implement. That the same file could be opened in two views that is attached to many processes. So you basically will have this Python file which is attached to this Python 3 process, and the same file which is attached to a Python 2 process.
No,
Right now we have only. Go ahead, Thomas.
I feel like we're trying to be far too generic and abstract about this. You know, we don't have thousands of things that fall into different categories of abstractions. We have notebooks, we have kernels, we have terminals.
Yeah, although, I mean, doesn't Cloud9, for example, have the ability to like run a file? I haven't used Cloud9 recently, but I remember originally that was part of the idea, that not only could you write your app there, but you could actually run it. So I think that's not a stretch.
But if you run it, then you open it in a terminal. But it's not, the file is not attached to the terminal. You're basically running the file in the terminal. So if you go to the terminal tab, and maybe the terminal tab has like name of the tab is the name of the file, but the real principle of notebooks is that they're live attached to a kernel, and you cannot make a change on it without changing the state of the kernel, which makes Thomas seeing notebook as something totally different from process, and Brian is completely thinking of notebooks as process, and you want process to be with process.
Well, no, I guess the way that I would say it is the only aspect of notebooks that the running tab deals with is the process nature of it.
No. No, because when you click on the link, you go to the notebook. You go to the notebook as content, so you can access the content of the notebook through the running tab.
Okay. And actually, here I'm more thinking.
I guess what you might want is when we have a refactoring of the dashboard. The running tab is because we have no way of filtering the dashboard, and what you would like is on the maybe file view see only all running notebooks. But one of the problems with that is that notebooks are in a tree structure, so you would have to basically walk all the.
No, I mean I think that I use the running tab often to kill notebooks across a bunch of directories. So I think that's a useful abstraction, and I guess part of what I'm like the aside from my proposed solution to the issue, the usability problem that I'm seeing is that there's this extra complexity of right now it feels like we're introducing a lot of different ways of doing a lot of different things, and I think users will, I don't know, it just feels more complex than it needs to be, regardless of what, and I feel like that is true regardless of what particular solution to that issue we look at. I don't see why, yeah.
Man, when you are on the desktop, you have your file manager that allow you to see files. On Windows, you have your menu bar that show you the files that are currently open, and that's what the running tab is. It's files that are currently open, and you have your task manager that allow you to kill processes.
Yeah. I mean,
it's three different abstraction, and it's the same. Maybe it's a running tab you don't like, but maybe it should be named open files. Like right now, we don't have a way to view files in the editor that are open, right? Maybe you want that also. So it's.
No, but there's no. How do you say it? I mean, I thought about that actually, and there's nothing. There's no state associated with an open text editor. Let me say it that way, right? I mean, there's no.
Yes, it could be not saved.
Well, but clicking the the link to that file in the Open Editors button will take you to a new tab that doesn't have those edits.
Oh, unless it's live synced.
Yes. No. Absolutely.
No, I mean,
then it makes sense. Yes. No. If you've opened a notebook and you're a text editor and you're doing live collaboration, then yes, there is state, and that starts to make sense.
And what about when we will have delayed kernel start? How do you list open notebook? So you have this wide range of possibilities, and I don't think we should like merging notebook with are not pure processes, and terminal are pure processes for now.
I mean, to me, this just actually it makes me think back to how all of these issues are handled on Google Drive, and that is there is only one dashboard. That's it. Like there's not like a separate dashboard for all files and then files that are currently opened, and it's as simple as possible. And this is part of my. I mean, think about operating systems. Like operating systems have notions of files and processes, but from the user's perspective, all there is files and processes. Like there's no I don't know. It feels like we're making things more complex than they need to be. I'm less attached to my particular solution to this issue than I am attached to the fact that it's more complex. I mean, our current dashboard is already more complex than most operating systems in this respect, and I think that's a problem.
Once we have the dashboard refactor, I guess might be a way to simplify the filtering, but
no,
right now, I mean, if you take any OS, you probably have no way of keeping a document open by restarting the process without losing the document and have it reappear. Or I don't know, you kill another process, but there is no thing that work like we are doing notebooks. You have no abstraction in the OS that allow you to see this difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I appreciate your thoughts on this, Matthias. I don't know the answer, but it was something as I started to use Current Master a lot a week ago that it very quickly. I don't know. I feel like it's a usability issue that we have right now.
I understand your point of view also, and I see what you want to do, and it also makes sense in some point, but
yeah, it's not obvious what exactly it should be.
Yeah.
So let's. The last one is multiple times. So right, this is issue 7233. Multiple times since we have the duplicate button in the dashboard, I've come dangerously close to deleting notebooks. And so right now, the duplicate and delete button are attached to each notebook and file in the dashboard, and they're merged visually to be a single button group. And I feel like that merging into a button group is creating a visual hierarchy that we don't want to be present. Like those two actions do not go together. And also, I think it's a little, it's related, but it's a little odd that shutdown button is red, but the delete button is white. In my mind, delete is the most red thing there is. And so I think we should separate those two buttons, just make them separate buttons, not in a group, and then have delete be red and shutdown be yellow.
That's fine. I guess I don't think there is.
I mean, the only downside is it means that the entire page will have red buttons on it, which totally sucks.
The other problem is people who have like reflexes based on color, and if we switch delete to read immediately, people will just like red, click, 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 and I don't have any more notebooks. So we should probably do a gradual change.
What are we going to do about the running indicator? Because right now the red acts kind of as a this is running. If we separate it into yellow and red buttons that are visible all the time.
Then the delete button needs to be a flashing red, blue button or something.
Does the delete prompt if you really want to delete? Let's try it.
Delete brings up a modal confirmation dialog. Shutdown does not.
Okay, so deleting is less. There are few chances of people deleting notebooks. I mean, less than.
Fernando?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh,
the joys of hiring and immigration.
Can we blame Matthias this time?
No, unfortunately we can't.
Okay. Someone else. All right.
Yeah.
So we're
much worse and much scarier. So.
Ooh.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We're talking about the delete and duplicate buttons on each item in the dashboard.
Yeah.
And what I have almost accidentally deleted notebooks when I get into workflows where I'm managing notebooks, like duplicating and deleting them, and they're neither of them are red, and they're right next to each other in a grouped button, and so I propose minimally separating them into two separate buttons. But then also I think that we need to rethink the coloring. So right now shutdown is red, but delete is white.
Yeah, delete and shutdown. I mean, one is destructive of in-memory state. The other one is destructive of data. I would argue that delete is even more dangerous than shutdown.
And so I had proposed making shutdown yellow and delete red, but then someone brought up the great point that our users are currently trained that red means shutdown, and so they might start clicking shutdown in their mind and realize, oh no, I just deleted all my notebooks.
Yeah.
We can put the two red for time being.
Yeah, I mean making both red.
No, it doesn't work because they will click always. Remove delete. Use the terminal.
No, use the terminal is not for that. I mean, the question is.
You cannot really delete by accident because there is a modal dialog.
What about removing the duplicate instead?
Well, we just added that.
Okay. And why was that added?
I think it was. It's an action you want to be able to do in the dashboard. And in the past, we had been saying, well, let's not do that until we refactor the dashboard. And the refactoring is not going to happen anytime soon, but people still want to be able to do duplicates there. So it just.
I mean, is it like no? I'm honestly asking. Is it really that common to need to? Because I only need to do that occasionally, and I don't mind doing it from the make a copy of an open notebook. Like I don't know. I don't find that to be something that I need that frequently to warrant a button on the main dashboard. I'm okay if that contradicts other people's usage patterns. I'm just asking an honest question here.
I actually feel 50-50 on that one. I'm fine either way.
And keep in mind, I'm not saying that it isn't a legitimate thing to have, but I'm weighing the need for that against the fact that it's creating this dangerous confusion of having this this not very common and frequent action right next to a certainly needed and dangerous action, and that it's pushing us into this confusion. And so I'm wondering if in the spirit of simplifying things, given our limited resources, we say, well, okay, well, it's a very bare bones dashboard and MVP thing. So if you need to do a file duplication, it's not a full-fledged file manager. If you need to duplicate things, you have to open it and make a copy, or do it at the terminal. It's not like there are no ways to do it. The experienced user can do it at the terminal. The more GUI-driven user can do it from the make a copy menu option. And at least, yes, it is a little bit more limiting, but it doesn't it doesn't put us in this conundrum of having this potential conflict. Because if delete were by itself, it wouldn't be such a big deal.
What about a checkbox? Just a checkbox that hides, that by default makes the delete button hidden. So you get duplicate. When you open, it's duplicate shutdown, yellow. And when you click shutdown, the button just slides and you only have. And when you click the checkbox, all by CSS, everything appears and you can delete. That shouldn't require too much refactor.
Honestly, that's starting to complicate a UI that we actually know needs a real refactoring rather than adding more doodads dangling from the side. I would just simplify and remove it.
Are there other actions like duplicate that we could put in a drop down? Basically, have other with a drop down, and then you click on other and can do different things.
Yeah, or you could certainly have rename and move are obvious ones, and eventually what you would want, but I know that's hard to do, but is to implement an override of the right-click menu so that the right-click menu has those actions. That's what Google Drive does. Google Drive has right-click actions for a file. So in Google Drive, if you right-click on a file, you get an actual menu for things like rename and copies and all that. So they only have buttons for the very, very big main things, and they have secondary actions on a right-click. So, I don't know. I would vote for avoiding this dangerous conflict for which we don't have an easy solution by taking the path of simplifying the UI, and rather than adding more complexity to a UI that we know isn't our long-term solution anyway.
Doug's right. I would vote to remove duplicate 2 and notebook action, rename, grade, publish, move, delete.
So remove
you want custom action like grade and publish.
Oh, grade and publish. No, we're not doing that right now. Those are future. Yeah. So Brian, would you? It seems like you actually wanted the duplicate button.
I have used it since it has been there. So again, I like in a refactored dashboard. There's no doubt that duplicate would be one of the actions we would offer.
Sure.
And so
I totally. I'm not advocating against.
Yeah.
I am advocating against. I'm advocating as a temporary solution in the context we are in, and in the balance of this versus what I perceive as a more dangerous problem with that delete button right next to it, and as a compromise solution. I'm not saying that that we shouldn't have that action in a well-designed dashboard in the long run.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I would really like to change the coloring of delete to red and do yellow or orange for shutdown, but
we can do it in two passes, like change from red to yellow for shutdown for one version. But shutdown is that delete is not red, so that people forget red.
Yep.
And then so shutdown is yellow, and delete is white for 3.0, and for Jupyter or 4.0 we still have shutdown, which is yellow, but delete is red.
I like that idea. I think that's a good.
Okay, I'm totally happy with that, but that's a little different from what do we do with a duplicate button? Do we?
No, it is, and there's two. Yeah.
Brian, do you want to think about it a little bit more and kind of finish it off on the issue, because it seems like you're the one who wants to think a little bit more about it. And
do we? And I would have to look at the code for this. I would say if we almost have the code for rename in place, working, I would be in favor of replacing duplicate by a drop-down titled Other that has a duplicate and a rename option. That to me, I think we could do that as long. I mean, and I don't know. We'll have to look at the JavaScript code to see how modular it is, because we have rename capabilities for newly uploaded notebooks, and it might not be too difficult to add that logic to other items. But I don't.
Why don't you have a quick look, but kind of think about it in a conservative mode of, this is going to be a rabbit hole of weeks of work. Let's not do it.
No, I mean, there's two really simple things. One is remove it. The other is to just split it into a separate button so the visual hierarchy doesn't suggest that these two things go together.
Yeah. I'd be in favor of removing it, but I don't know. That's kind of 50-50. I'm slightly not. I'm 60-40 in favor of removing it, but not 90-10 or 100-0.
Okay. Let's. I would also like to get Min's read on that, because I think isn't he the one that implemented the duplicate?
Okay. Yeah. But let's give it a chance, and if you have a chance to have a quick look at the code and get a sense for whether that drop-down would be like a couple of hours or a couple of days and lots of testing and debugging, or something that's almost in place. Because what I don't want is to kind of open up another kind of a big thread right now on this.
Okay. The other, I mean, it's already pretty late.
Yeah, it's pretty late.
But we do need to talk with you around about the terminal dashboard tab.
7234.
723. Yes, and it's the way it's related to possibly simplifying the new button in the dashboard. 7231. Mm-hmm. But maybe we need to do that another day. I know we've been here a while.
Yeah, we've been here a while, but very quickly, broadly speaking, the more I think about this one, the more I am actually in favor, and I know that it goes against what I see as Thomas's broadly -1 and Matthias's, but I am kind of leaning, the more I think about it, towards just kind of offering a running one where, yes, terminals and notebooks are slightly different, but they are the same in the sense that they are running processes. If our users think of a notebook it's like a graphical terminal, and the terminal is an old school one, I do like that unification, and so I'm leaning. The more I've thought about it, and I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days, the more I think about it, the more I am inclined to basically go with the summary of that. Is that a PR or just an issue?
I think it's just an issue.
Yeah, kind of going towards the design point that the issue proposes. Sort of, I guess, disagreeing with Matthias and Thomas. And kind of agreeing with what Doug and Brian said there. Thomas and Matthias, do you guys? What do you think of my disagreement with you?
I can live without the different tabs. I think that pure processes like terminals and notebooks that are really documents that are attached to processes, where we can restart the processes and the document and reload the documents like separately, is a different abstraction, and they should need to be separate.
So I mean, what I was imagining, and I don't know if we can do this right away or not. What I was imagining is that we might say running, and in the running one have maybe two sections. One is terminals, and they're together, and one says notebooks, and they're together. But they're kind of just two areas in the same.
Yeah, but you have this fuzzy border where you have both the state of notebook which are running and open, and like for me the running is also notebooks that are already open in the tab, which is like you have this thing which are not totally processes. They are not only processes. If you kill the processes, your notebook might still be open, and you have like they are not. Personally, I cannot think of a notebook when I see the running tab. For me, notebooks are not processes. I understand that they're attached to processes, but for me, they are not processes. It's a document I'm working on, and the processes is something with which I interact. And I know that Brian is seeing this as processes, kernels, but I'm not, and I guess I'm not the only one. And that's why we disagree, because people have different view of that.
Yeah, but if we think of them as documents, then the argument would be we should have, so for the editor, we should have like an open files list of what files are open, and then the question becomes, for files it's very clear, they're open files. For terminals it's very clear, they're just shell processes that are open. And then documents or notebooks are this weird in between that bridges. They have one leg as a file, one leg as a process.
And part of what I ended up saying is I feel very strongly that we do have a problem here, a usability problem, in that we're creating something that is more complex than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I'm less attached to my particular solution of that problem, but I feel very strongly that we do have a problem.
So here's an idea. What about a tab which, instead of calling running or notebooks and terminals, we have a tab, something called activity or active. And then in that tab, we have a section which is notebooks, a section which is terminals, and a section which is files. And basically, these are the things that you currently have active.
And part of what I was going to say is, and Matthias brought this up, once we have live real-time collaboration on text documents,
mm-hmm.
then there's actual state associated with those documents, and you would want to track whether they're open or not.
Yeah.
What I don't want to have is yet another tab.
No. But that's why I'm thinking we do. And by the way, Doug, I know you're listening. We do want to keep clusters separately, even though it is a little funky to have them there, because clusters are Python specific. They're not generic. So in a sense, we're gonna leave them there at least for the time being, as long as IPython parallel exists and is valuable. But we don't want to conflate them any further with the things that are generic across languages and across Jupyter. So clusters are a little bit of a quirk, but they're a useful quirk, and so at least we keep them kind of isolated. But what do you guys think of this idea of activity? And then activity is, because activity then basically can represent open text editor files. It can represent open notebooks where you're just collaborating on the text even without a kernel. It can represent notebooks that have a kernel active, and can represent terminals. And it's the things that you have active. Does
actually
help?
And the other thing I like about that is that it is very likely that we will add additional entities, such as debuggers.
Yeah.
And I like having a unified perspective of that.
And what I like about that is that initially it's easy. Oh, cool, dog. That's great. But they're still through an IPython thing. So that. You could imagine starting with something very simple, where at the beginning we just do like files, terminals, notebooks. But as this gets richer and things like what you're talking about come in the game, and our infrastructure is better, you could imagine even giving the user options to sort by most recently active. If we have an event mechanism that lets us know which terminals are active, or having little icons that tell you which terminal, like you're watching a process and which terminal emitted a bell. And then knowing, oh, I have this long-running compilation job that I left in this terminal yesterday, and now it's finished, and I have a bell on it. And things of that kind of it's your view on the activity, that the computational activity of your Jupyter system.
And actually, it would be very nice to know what other users are active on which documents, to get a big picture of sort of.
Yeah.
At that level, it sort of becomes like Gitter, where you can see here's the different activities going on, and oh, Min's working on that one, Fernando's over there.
Exactly, and you could imagine for that document, you see the icon, the little icons of or the names or some shorthand of the other users who are active on it with you, and things of that nature. And that would be easy to do even right now, because it would be basically a matter of using one of those two tabs. And for now, we could just do it by sections to keep it really simple, right? Just activity, and it's notebooks, terminals, and files, and that's it.
Although we don't have any state right now to know that files are open.
Okay, well, we could skip. I would like files, but it doesn't have to happen. So we could do just notebooks and terminals for now. Thomas, you've been. I'm disagreeing with you, and you're suspiciously silent.
I've tuned out a bit. Sorry.
What would you think of this activity concept?
Yes, I think we probably shouldn't get to it 3.0, but the concept sounds fine.
So right now, basically, doing that would require just renaming the tab that is called running to renaming it to be activity, and moving the content of the terminals tab to be in that tab. I mean, we could live with it the way it is and mark this issue as post 3.0. That's also fine.
Yeah, I'm pretty. I think it's important that we don't have usability regressions. I understand that new things can be minimal, but I don't know. I absolutely don't think we should hold up 3.0 for this, but I think it's pretty high priority. Let's see where we can get on it.
I don't think of this as a regression, Brian, in the sense that because the new tab is isolated and it is a new capability, it's not going to change in a sense like, oh, well, now it does this new thing, which is terminal, and they're there.
And we know you want 4.0 1 month after 3.0, so you can leave 1 month with a different tab.
Yeah. So in that sense, I don't think this is a regression. I think it's what we have is a less than optimal implementation of a new feature. But I don't think this is a regression because the existing stuff doesn't change, and so from the perspective of users, their experience is like, oh, I'm used to this and it's still there. So I don't think it's appropriate to call that a regression.
Yeah.
And we do need to start calling down and really narrowing it to stabilize. For example, what is a problem, that is a real problem, is the fact that as far as I can tell, the terminal button the shutdown terminal button still doesn't work.
Yeah. No, yeah, that is true.
Okay, so let's put this one as potentially post 3.0.
No, I think it's, yeah, I'm fine. If it's something that we can do quickly and easily, I'd like to do it, but yes, I agree that we wouldn't. I don't think we want to hold up in any significant way for that.
Okay, last. I think we're done, right? Because you guys were waiting a little bit for me on this.
Yeah, let me look back at the... meetings for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, next week is like right in the middle of Christmas, right? So that's kind of crazy.
Well, but as I said, I think we can all finish opening presents by 9:30 in the morning. I mean...
That's true. That's true, especially because I haven't bought any presents, and I don't think I'm getting. I already got my Christmas present from you guys.
The status page.
Exactly.
Obviously, I don't want to have a meeting on Thanksgiving or New Year. With the release coming up, I'm a little weary to not have any meetings until after January 1st.
Yeah. Why don't we? I mean, one thing we could do is have a meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm completely.
Let me look at my calendar. Why don't we have a meeting? So next week. Why don't we have the meeting on Tuesday instead?
Okay.
Let's do it on Tuesday. And by the way, we'll have to plan for rethinking the schedule for next year because Thursdays are going to turn into an impossible day for me after the New Year. So. Yeah, let's just meet on Tuesday. How does that work for John and Matthias and Thomas and Damian, if Damian is still listening? I don't know, his icon changed.
I'm here. It's good for me.
Fine.
I can try. I'm not sure for this Tuesday, and I won't know until Tuesday. So.
Okay, we'll see. How about you, Thomas? Will you be already in the UK?
I will be back in England by then. I might be online. Don't count on it.
Okay. Alrighty. Then let's give it a try, and at least we'll try to kick the ball forward and start looking at 3.0, kind of really finalizing the list of tasks. Alrighty. Okay. See you hopefully on Tuesday, as many of you as possible.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
See you
everyone.
tomorrow.
Night. All right. Bye-bye.